Michael Afton is the silent main protagonist in most of the FNaF games, and throughout the games his character expands and we see his origins and how he evolved throughout the years. But how did his character evolve and expand? How did he go from a bully to a somewhat reluctant hero? Well, I think we're going to have to take a deep dive into every game he's in somewhat release order, and see how he evolved from game to game. When FNaF 1 was released, Michael was first introduced as Mike Schmidt, a guy that takes a job at Freddy's to pay the bills. But when he starts the job, he realizes that the job wouldn't be as easy as he thought it would be. The animatronic mascots, possessed by 5 kids, start roaming around during the night and try to reach his office. But Mike survives 6 nights, and then he tampers with the robot's AI to make them more aggressive, because he's really confident in his FNaF skills, and thinks he's better than everyone. Didn't I already make that joke? Anyways, Mike's actions of course wouldn't go unnoticed, as management saw him tamper with the animatronics. They fire him, reasons being tampering with the animatronics, being a douchebag, and being a total sweat after 20 mode. Literally. Next game that I will cover is FNaF 4. I'll cover FNaF 2 and 3 later in the video. In FNaF 4, Mike is having nightmares and starts being tormented by monstrous versions of the Fazbear Band and 2 toy gremlins. By the many references to the first game, that being the same mechanics to deal with the robots, Bonnie, left door, Chica, right door, Foxy, check on him, and Freddy being more active in the dark, the fan, the phone, and the FNaF 1 phone call. All of that leads us to believe that these nightmares take place shortly after FNaF 1. In the minigames we see flashbacks of the past and see, somewhat, Mike's origins. We see he's the oldest brother of his 2 siblings, and that even when he was in his early teens, he was still a douchebag. He constantly bullies his younger brother for not having a real name, or, more canonically, because he's afraid of the robots. It seems that their parents and their younger sister aren't really around that much in the house as well. Throughout the week, Mike scares his younger brother with the Foxy mask, and often takes him to Fredbear's and leaving him there, even locking him in the parts and services room. All of this to make him grow up. That all results in the day of his brother's birthday party, where he and his friends play a dumb prank that results in horrible consequence. The boy was sent to the hospital, but he wasn't going to last long. Before he dies, Mike apologizes to his brother. It shows that he did truly care about his brother, and didn't mean to harm him. But this event would haunt him for the rest of his life. In the present day, we see Mike is now dealing with his worst nightmare, the thing that killed his brother. He defeats it, then in the next few nights, he deals with the thing that were causing these nightmares. He defeats it and survives. The nightmares would stop after the 8th night. From what we can gather from those 2 games, Mike is somewhat of a douche that likes joking around, even if his jokes are, sometimes, horrendous. He also isn't afraid of being blunt and direct, but he's also a guy that cares about his close friends and family, and is relatively a kind-hearted guy, sometimes, and is also someone haunted by the tragedy of his past. Alright, FNaF 2. I'll be honest, I don't think Mike is Fritz. Being fired for the same reason doesn't mean it's the same character. You are getting fired for tampering with the animatronics AI in Custom Night. It's a meta joke and shouldn't be taken seriously. You gotta remember, this is the 2nd game in the franchise, so a lot of things would be similar to the first, and there are a lot of things in this game that aren't important in the long run. Now onto Sister Location. This game gives us the most on Michael. The first is, of course, the main game. We see Mike applied for a job as a technician at Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental. He meets Circus Baby, She guides him throughout the week, seemingly knowing a lot about Mike and why he's here. And why is he here? His father had asked Mike to put his sister back together, the girl that died to the killing machine. Mike, seeing a chance to be with his sister again, jumps to the opportunity to save her. And that little girl is Afton's daughter. That makes Mike William Afton's oldest son. While there were hints of this in the previous game, this game confirms this connection. Throughout the week, Mike deals with his father's creations and finds out more things about this facility and his father's work. In Night 5, Baby tricks him and scoops his innards, ripping his organs and skeleton to make room for her and her tangled gang. They use Mike's body for months until the body is entirely rotting. From what we see in these minigames, Mike is very popular with the neighborhood, but then everyone hides when they see a purple guy strolling along. Ennard bails from Mike and leaves him to seemingly die. But Elizabeth didn't want Michael to die, so she left some of the remnant to make him come back from the dead. Mike reawakens, an undead man. In the final cutscene, we hear Mike for the first time.
Father, it's me, Michael. I did it. I found it. It was right where you said it would be. They were all there.
He tells us that William seemingly told him about his sister and to go to the facility to free her, and that they were all there. All there could mean he's talking about the 5 kids inside of the Fun Times, and that they thought it was William.
They didn't recognize me at first, but then they thought I was you.
That would make sense, as the 5 kids do know what William looks like, as evident by the FNaF 3 minigames and the novel trilogy. Then Mike talks about his sister. He says he's found her and put her back together.
And I found her. I put her back together, just like you asked me to. She's free now.
Which means Elizabeth didn't have all of her memories at the time of sister location, and the circus baby AI was more in control. Then when Mike freed her, her memories and baby's AI merged into one. Like we see in the 4th closet, where both the 4th Charlie bot and Elizabeth's memories were merged. Then Mike says he's living in shadows.
But something is wrong with me. I should be dead, but I'm not. I've been living in shadows.
Referencing that his body was disfigured for a long time and had to be hidden from the public, and that he's going to find William with a tone that sounded like a threat.
There is only one thing left for me to do now. I'm going to come find you. I'm going to come find you.
So from this cutscene, we get 2 things to note. Mike looks a lot like his father, and that he was at Fazbear's Fright when it burned down. The second thing that sister location gives us about Mike is Immortal and the Restless. The show shows us a vampire, Vlad, and his partner, Clara, arguing about their son. Clara is adamant that the son is Vlad's, while Vlad doesn't think so, even though it's pretty obvious it is, as they are both vampires. At the end of the show, they both get back together. This show obviously mirrors the early days of the Afton family, the purple-wearing Vlad being William, Clara being Mrs. Afton, and the look-alike son being Mike. So what do we get from those episodes are, Afton didn't believe or didn't want to believe Mike was his, even though he obviously is. But then William and his wife get back together and have 2 more kids. It's obvious William didn't like Mike, even when he was a baby, and that's especially evident when Afton sends him to the facility to essentially die. The third and last thing that sister location gives us about Mike is these Easter eggs of the FNaF 4 rooms and the real nightmares. I already made the lengthy video on these rooms and what happened in it, so please check it out when you're done with this video. But for a short summary, these rooms were used in what I like to call the nightmare experiments. They are essentially William testing out illusion discs after he stole it from Henry and mass-produced it with Afton Robotics. The test dummy was supposed to be Crying Child in Mike's old childhood room, but Mike killed him before he got a chance to use him, so William takes Mike to his old room and uses him for the experiments. He wanted to see if different people with a different feeling towards the character would affect what their minds will show them. So Mike survives the experiments, but he would relive this event in FNaF 4, mixed with his recent job and the death of his brother. Again, after you finish this video, please go and check out that video I did on it, to learn more on how I came to a lot of my conclusions. So as we saw, Michael's character is still consistent with his other two appearances, but a little bit more mature as a result of his bizarre experiences. He's still a guy that cares about his family and friends, obviously spending 5 nights underground just to see his sister again, without even thinking if it could be dangerous or not. We also get some new info on Michael. He knew that the Fun Times had the souls of the missing kids, as they thought he was William. Whether he knew it before this location, because of FNaF 1, or after, because they were merged, the real answer is unknown. And after finding out that the animatronics that his father built are killing machines and got his sister killed in the process, and finding out that he's also a serial killer, he has now a deep hatred for his father and is going to find him and kill him. Speaking of his father, FNaF 3 is next. Knowing that Michael was in Fazbear's Fright when it burned down, and the fact he's looking for his father, it's pretty clear he's the unnamed security guard. Phone Dude tells us that Mike worked for a while in the location, which could mean that Mike was probably relying on Phone Dude and the other owners to find all of the remaining characters that are out there, like Ennard and the Puppet, to be in one roof to destroy. But then Phone Dude brings in something worse. They bring in Springtrap, and I think Mike recognized it as his father instantly. When Springtrap arrives, his agony, built up for 30 years, would instantly infect the building, and causes Mike to have hallucinations of the props and his past memories to jump scare him and distract him from the only real threat that is trying to kill him. Mike survives 5 nights with Afton and decides he's waited long enough, and burns the building. But unfortunately for him, he didn't kill anyone. After the fire stopped and everything goes still, he probably gives his monologue, until Springtrap reappears and runs away, and Mike is now back to square one again. Next we have FNaF 6. While FNaF 6 doesn't outright say we play as Mike, it's heavily hinted that we are by a lot of the voice lines of most characters. Molten Freddy.
Oh, what a pleasant surprise!
Molten Freddy clearly recognizes us and is surprised we are here,
Together again!
clearly referencing the 5 kids and Mike back together since FNaF 1 and sister location. Scrap Baby.
You're not who I expected to see.
She clearly expected a random guard, not her brother again. Afton.
You may not recognize me at first, but I assure you, it's still me.
Clearly the guard saw Afton as Springtrap before switching suits. Henry.
And to you, my brave volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you. Although there was a way out planned for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling that you are right where you want to be.
So yeah, Mike is the player of this game. He creates possibly the most dangerous pizzeria ever, brings in all of the souls, and Henry burns everything down, ending the horror and ending Michael's story. The next entry to look at is the survival logbook. The logbook gives us a lot about Mike's character, motive, and his history throughout the franchise. I will discuss the more important parts of the book that tell us the most about Mike. The logbook was given to Mike most likely when he worked in FNaF 1. While yes, there are references to the FNaF 3 office in the book, The description of the book itself states that it's a logbook for security guards for Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. And just by reading the book and the description, it's obvious this is a Fazbear Entertainment product, not something from Fazbear's Fright. And also the ghostwriting wouldn't be able to appear during FNaF 3 as there is only Afton. So the ghostwriting most likely came from FNaF 1. The many references of FNaF 3 and other things is probably not to be taken seriously. I mean, look at FNaF World. It's extremely meta, yet it's still somewhat canon to the other games. Anyways, the logbook details Mike's journey through FNaF 1, FNaF 4, and sister location, and possibly FNaF 3. So, let's go through the most irrelevant parts. On page 6, the logbook asks Michael 10 reasons he applied at Freddy's. That sounded like a good idea at the time. His answer: employees get free pizza. So here you go. Mike didn't work at Freddy's because of his father's orders, or even to find his father. It's because he got free pizza. That honestly sounds like something Mike would do. On page 14, you know what they say. Laugh and the whole world laughs with you. Cry and you cry alone. Then Mike writes down, not funny. Maybe he's reminded of his brother that cried alone while everyone else laughed at him. On page 29, we see Mike loving money. We know he does love money, and free pizza. On page 30, the logbook asks, who does Mike relate to? He answers, Clara from the Immortal and the Restless, because everything about this place is crazy, and no one seems to notice except me. Clearly referencing the animatronics and paranormal events that's going on at Freddy's, but nobody believes or cares about it. On page 34, we see Mike drawing casual bonkos next to Circus Baby. Clearly he drew this after night 3 of Sister Location. On page 41, the page and Cassidy asks Mike about dreams. He draws a picture of Nightmare. On page 49, the logbook asks Mike 10 bad habits you'd like to break. Mike says chewing gum excessively. I bet he likes watermelon gum. On page 83, Cassidy asks either Mike or Crying Child, is this song familiar to you? This could reference the random song that we hear during FNaF 1. Or maybe the Toreador March. On page 92, we see Mike draw the cash basket and exotic butters, clearly referencing Sister Location, and his love for money. On page 99, when a PR disaster strikes, it's always good to have a plan. Think of an alternative explanation to these common misunderstandings. My child said Freddy bit him. Based Mike answers, he tripped and fell on Freddy's teeth. Not our fault. It's funny to see this side of him, since we presumably get to see it as well in FNaF 6, and the multiple lawsuits he could have had. There's also multiple doodles of Mike tarnishing Fazbear throughout the book. At least he still got his sense of humor. Also, the many bloodstains that are in the logbook could be a result of Ennard being in Mike's body, and blood dripping from his body and staining the book. It is also unknown if Mike knew his brother was communicating with Cassidy during his shift. My guess is that he didn't. And that's all of the noteworthy stuff in the logbook. One last thing. If Mike turns out to be Fritz, I guess you can say he did it for a quick buck, believing that the robots are just malfunctioning before going to FNaF 1. So he tampers with their AI to either make them less or more aggressive. Knowing him, it's probably more. And then is fired. But I don't know. Mike starting his journey in FNaF 1 is just narratively better than just he worked at Freddy's once for a quick buck, got fired anyways, then 6 years later he works at Freddy's again for the money and free pizza. Then realizes something is wrong with them. You see what I mean? I think Fritz is just a throwaway character that was just supposed to show us that Jeremy moved the day shift, nothing more. So, in conclusion, Mike is definitely a standout character. He started as a dickhead bully that had a neglectful father in his teenage years that eventually made a horrible mistake, to an arrogant and cocky kid that still has his sense of humor in his 20s that worked at Freddy's for the money and free pizza, which resulted in beginning his unexpected journey where he experienced the horror of his past mistakes and finding his sister, to a disfigured man that still likes money and isn't afraid to take risks. But throughout it all, he is still a good guy at heart that loves his family and doesn't hesitate to do the right thing, despite everything he's lost. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, all that jazz, and I'll see you all next time. See you on the flip side.